I often get asked, why did I go organic? And the answer I give now would be different to the answer I would have given when the first field on this farm gained organic status over 26 years ago. Then, I would have said, I did it to maintain the topsoil and also to avoid agrochemical use. But the reasons I have stayed farming organically are a bit more diverse than that. I first started gardening on the family veg patch as a young teenager, and the reason I started vegetable gardening was due to a teenage hatred of broad beans. I didn't even purposely go organic. I did it without even knowing I was doing it. In a fit of teenage angst, I tore up a vast amount of my father's veg garden, which was covered in only one crop, broad beans. And I had to replace it with something more tasty, but I needed information, and luckily my father had just got a book from a book club called John Seymour's Book on Self-Sufficiency. And although my father was a farmer, a gardener he was not, and I needed guidance. Seymour's book showed me how to make a compost bin, taught me rotations and growing vegetable basics. Organics wasn't mentioned as far as I recall, but that was what this book was describing. In fact, I didn't know I was growing organically for a couple of years or so. My love of fruit and vegetable growing propelled me into studying commercial horticulture at Agricultural College, which my careers advisor told me was quite a lot more industrial than growing just a few tomatoes in your back garden. He was not wrong. While at college, elder friends lent me books such as Rachel Carson's The Silent Spring and Balfour's The Living Soil. It became obvious that this was not only a way to garden, but a way to farm. A girlfriend lent me a copy of Lawrence Hill's Vegetable Growing, and I lapped it up like a bee taking in nectar. None of these books were on the college's suggested reading list. Growing up on a Fenland farm made me only too aware of soil erosion. Fen blows around us were quite common, and it didn't take much imagination when I read Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath to picture what he was trying to describe. I had also come across farmers and farm workers with various health problems, from skin complaints to Parkinson's, and my reading led me to believe that these conditions could be attributed to pesticide exposure. Organics seemed like a good way of avoiding these issues. My whole family were farmers, all uncles, both grandfathers, and interestingly it was my grandfathers who were most encouraging when it came to organics. One grandfather, Dan, recalled a time before chemical farming took hold. He described how the more artificial nitrogen they put on, the more pesticides were needed. He had got on a treadmill that was very difficult to get off. In the late 70s and early 80s, I would often work with Grandad Dan in his orchards. The plum picking was mostly done by locals, and this working together enlivened and enriched the local community. This working together gave people time to share thoughts, jokes, concerns, gossips. I grew up on farms where people in the fields were a common sight, but by the 90s, the land had become generally as devoid of people as a Constable painting. In 1990, following a decade of going to college and working in the hilly countryside of Essex and Berkshire, I yearned for the fen flatlands of Cambridgeshire. I returned to the family farm. One day I put the plough on and ploughed a field. My dad came up and asked what was I going to grow in it. I told him grass clover lay. Why? He asked. I told him I was converting it to organics. He looked at me, wondering if I was joking. He realised I was not. He called it peasant farming and drove away. In hindsight, economically, turning land organic in 1990 was a daft thing to do. Not many people were that interested in buying organically raised vegetables then. In fact, by converting that 13-acre field, I became one of only 6 organic farmers in the whole of Cambridgeshire. Not only that, but I became the second largest, with the equivalent of 6.5 football pitches worth of certified organic land. I once got asked by a non-organic vegetable grower how I controlled pests and diseases. I said, I don't control them. I let them control themselves. How do you do that? He asked. By building a biologically diverse and therefore ecologically stable farm, I answered. I could tell by his eyes that for a split second he thought I was joking. Growing a diversity of crops means you cannot specialise, and if you cannot specialise, you put yourself at an economic disadvantage to everyone else. This is where our volunteers come in. They help us to farm in the best way possible. This helps people to understand nature and the value of food, and by directly connecting with it, they get to comprehend it all the more. Many tell me it nurtures their soul as well as fills their stomachs. The laughter and conversations I eavesdrop on reinforces this view. Their enthusiasm and laughter also nurture my soul. I think truthfully, I figured growing organic would stop the farm becoming sicker. I never imagined it would improve it in so many different ways. Eve Balfour once said, "The health of soil, plant, animal and man is one and indivisible." And she was right. So what would be my answer now? It would be, it is great for nature, it is good for the soil, and it's perfect for people. Am I still learning? Yes. Farmers say it takes 7 years to learn one crop, and I reckon it takes a lifetime to know a farm. Yes, I'm still learning. No longer from courses or books as such, but from the farm itself. It teaches you what you need to know. You just have to be a good listener.